Ellie Perlman. Welcome to the Capital Raiser Show. My wife, Belen, and I were at the Raising Money Summit in Denver. That's where we first found out about you and heard your story. She wanted to send you a big hug and say hello. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ruben. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm in the middle of a road trip, so I'm in a small library in a small town in Oklahoma. I don't even want to pronounce the name, or else somebody will come and say, "Hey, that's not how you call this city," or whatnot. But I'm super excited to have you on here. So we were just talking a little bit about raising capital and the process of podcasting. You have a really cool show. It's called Ready to Scale, correct? So, and you're on your second season. The first season had a different name that was about telling stories in real estate. Like, oh my God, did that really happen in your business? So that's really cool. I definitely want to talk about everything podcasting, everything raising capital, your business, what you do for your business. Your company is called Blue Lake Capital. And I know that you have about 2,000 units that you've passively and actively invested in. Tell us a little bit about let's start with your business background. I'm not talking about when you were a lawyer, but what you're currently doing in the multifamily syndication space.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, as the CEO and founder of Blue Lake, we only do multifamily. I love multifamily. I can understand it. I used to be a tenant myself, so um, it's something that is, it's intuitive. It's interesting to me. And we buy properties in Texas, Florida, and Georgia, which are great markets because they have really impressive, population growth, rent growth, job growth. So a lot of good things are happening there. And if to sum up in one sentence, what I do is I buy multifamily properties. I improve the operations, cut costs, and increase revenues, usually by renovating the property and then sell after 3 to 5 years. So it sounds pretty easy, and that's in one sentence, but that's basically what we do. And we invest our own money in the deals, but we also bring other investors, passive investors, to invest with us. And that's a business. It's been pretty busy, and it's fun. I love what I do, which is a blessing. It took me years to get to that point. So
That's fantastic. I really love that. I want to ask you specific to my company. I don't want to talk too much about my company, but one of the things that we're doing is we're evolving in the process of learning how to market to people and share our stories so that way we can have them ready before we ever have a deal. And you seem really good about that. I see a lot of your posts on LinkedIn. You're constantly sharing. Is there a methodology? What are some of the things that you do to get your information and your brand awareness out there so people can know who you are before you ever have a deal?
yeah, absolutely. I think it all starts with making the decision to become a thought leader, and that means that you're sharing your knowledge, you're sharing the information that you have with others, and generally just wanting to help, and expose some of your story, but also your experience. And it starts with there are a lot of platforms on social media, and that's one of the main platforms that I'm using. And for me, I started with looking at all the platforms and said, okay, which one would I tackle first? Because you can have a YouTube channel, a podcast, you can write articles and post a blog. So there are many, many avenues. And because I used to be a lawyer, I'm good at writing. That's what I love doing. And I also love educating. And so that was for me the natural first step. So I started by writing a weekly blog. And after I've found the first the first base, and I got good at it, then I moved to the other section, the other platform, and I started a podcast, and so and then conquered the next avenue. But for me, it was really about writing really helped me also find my own voice, because and it takes time. As syndicators and as investors, we're thinking, how can we be different than all the other investors out there? Because we're all going, frankly, we're all going for the same product. We're pretty much in the same markets. And for me, and it took me time to realize, understand what my voice was. And I understood, wait a minute, I'm very risk averse. I'm a very conservative investor. It's kind of intertwined in everything that I write about on social media. And social media is great. I'm using it to expand my reach to people that I've never met. and probably will never meet face to face. And it's been really great because 5 years ago I wasn't even living here in the States, and I moved here. The only person that I knew was my fiance, or my boyfriend at the time, which is, he's my husband today. And I didn't know anybody. And from that point, I was able to leverage social media and to expand my reach. So people reach out to me from all across the US, actually from all across the world, including Canada, Spain, Japan, because you put, content out there, and then you're breaking those limits of the actual circle of people that you know.
Yeah, not to mention like the stuff that you post or that people post on the internet, whether it's through social media or on YouTube, like people can access those. Like I listened to your first episode that you probably recorded like a year or two ago, maybe sometime way back, right? So that's the nice
Yeah.
thing about posting stuff on social media. Now, let me ask you, do you outsource or pay somebody to do the posts for you, or do you have a marketing budget in mind? Neil Bawa, who has been a guest on both of our shows, says, hey, a lot of people, they want to raise capital, but they have no marketing budget. So what is your marketing budget, or how do you do that side of your business, the marketing side?
Ruben, that's a really, really good question. And I have to say that especially when people are starting taking that syndication route, there's a tendency to save money and do everything on your own. And because of my business background, I understood that this is not the way, that's not how you scale. You can become a syndicator, but you can't really start a syndication business if you're doing everything. And I was also inspired by Robert Kiyosaki's book, where he's basically describing the four different quadrants of employee, self-employed, a business owner, and an investor. And he said that
Mhm.
there's a confusion between being a business owner and self-employed, because if you're doing everything, you're even if you have an LLC, a company, you're not a business owner, you're self-employed, you're a
Mhm.
consultant. And so in a way, and so I did start, right, at the beginning I did everything for a short period of time because I had to understand how the business works, to understand, okay, who are the people that I need to hire. If I don't do it myself, I don't really know what I need, who is it exactly I need to hire, and what type of person. And pretty early on, I was able to, on a budget, I was able to start hiring people that could help me. So one of my first hires was someone that can help me schedule meetings, for instance, help me find guests, sign up for the show, and so I can interview them, because all those things take a lot of your time. And this is time that are spent, can with you, for instance, and getting the word out there, speaking with an investor, walking a property, looking at it, underwriting after my underwriting team has been underwriting a deal. There's so many things that you can do with your time, that was for me the best use of my time. But back to your question, there is a way to outsource, and I absolutely outsource a lot of it. So writing the content, even though I review everything and I approve it, posting everything on social media, those things take time. So you have to ask yourself, when am I what's the best use of my time? Is it to post on LinkedIn or to talk with an investor? And so I used websites like Upwork, for instance, where you can hire someone and pay them by the hour. You can, if your budget is really small, you can actually hire people from the Philippines, and they usually have very good English. So for $5 to $10 an hour, they can help you schedule meetings, post stuff on social media. I just to go with a local team here in the US, but there's definitely a way to do it if your budget is even smaller.
Yeah, I wanted to go into what you do for Blue Lake Capital. I know that you're the CEO. Where do you focus? What's the best use of your time? Is it talking to people? Are you underwriting deals? Do you micromanage the construction of the repositioning of the asset? What is the main thing that you do for Blue Lake?
So Blue Lake is set up in that way that we have a marketing team, and they take care of bringing the leads, and posting on social media, and take care of brand awareness. And then we have an underwriting and an asset management team. So I have people who help me create content, post it, manage the assets, and also underwriting deals. Where I, focus is the kind of three avenues. The first one is talking with investors, meeting with them, speaking with family offices, talking with high net worth individuals, because this is something that is very hard to outsource. They all want to talk with me because they want to know, okay, we heard or read about Ellie. We want to invest with her. So just hiring someone to speak with them, in my opinion, is not going to be enough, because as a passive investor, and I'm also a passive investor because I like to diversify, I want to talk to the person who's making the decisions. One avenue. The second one is walk-in properties. So I do have a team that they underwrite deals. Once the deal looks good, and takes, underwriting takes weeks, then I get involved. I review review the underwriting, ask questions, and if I see that everything makes sense, then I fly out because I invest out of state. I live in Santa Monica and I buy in Orlando, in Jacksonville, in Atlanta, DFW. And at that point, I fly out to walk the properties, because I'm never going to sign on a loan and buy a property without actually seeing it. And then I get more involved, in the negotiation, especially since, I used to be a real estate lawyer before. So that's kind of, my bread and butter, or used to be my bread and butter. The third avenue is oversee the asset management. So we do have an asset manager, but working with the asset manager to make sure that everything is being done correctly, that the strategy is right, that we're at where we want to be. So these are kind of the three areas where, I'm dividing my time between all those three areas.
Very cool. So you like to invest in the Sun Belt area, or at least that's what some
Yeah.
people call it, which is,
Mhm.
like Atlanta or all of Georgia and parts of Florida and Texas. Everybody loves Texas. Where Bakerson is doing our first out-of-state deal. We're going to do it in Houston. Now, I want to talk to you about, because it's overwhelming a little bit for us, because we've purchased everything in state and now we're starting to move out of state. But you don't live in the same place where you invest. So I kind of want to go back a little bit and find out, what was that process like where you're developing the systems, tools, and people and boots on the ground to actually go invest in your first out of state deal? What was that like? How did you put it all together?
So first of all, I spent a few months behind my computer looking at reports, looking at different markets, just to narrow down and choose a handful of markets that I want to focus on. I don't buy everywhere around the states, because I really want to know the markets that I invest in. And even in those markets, I don't buy everywhere. In Florida, it's very specific markets. And it took me months to collect data. You can go to Yardi Matrix, RR, CBRE. They all have free reports, and we also have access to CoStar and Yardi Matrix, which are paid subscriptions.
Mhm.
And you just gather information. So I was looking at population growth, job growth, rent growth, landlord friendly state, or do we have rent control laws like in New York, San Francisco, and here, which is the number one reason why I don't buy here. I was looking at all those factors and whether there's an appreciation or is it a cash flowing market only. And I like to have a combination of both. And after doing that for a few months, I realized, okay, these are the markets that I want to invest. And that was the first step. The second step was basically starting to reach out to brokers to establish, a track record, a relationship with them. I actually flew for about, and I spent a week in each market, and I was walking property with brokers, even though some of them I was not interested in, but just to get FaceTime with them so they'll know
Mhm.
who I am. I'm not just, a name in the email, or just a voice behind the phone. And so they will get to know me. They'll learn what I like and what I don't like, what I'm looking for. And some of them took me and drove around the market and showed me different deals and showed me different neighborhoods. And that was really good. I learned those markets really, really well. And in addition, I printed out a report of recent sales, and I was just driving from one property that was sold to another and said, okay, this is how much $100,000 per door can get me. And in different neighborhoods, oh, okay, similar product can get me, same maybe income, but it costs here only $85,000 per door. So really driving around, seeing where the new constructions and new developments are, where are the bad areas. You really, really have to be there and drive around to get a sense of the area. And that was kind of the third step that I've taken. Then when I came back to California, that my team started to underwrite deals, and whenever we have a deal, I make sure to get back to the broker if the deal doesn't work and give them detailed feedback on why it's not working. And that's basically how I did it.
Do you have the same partners in each of those markets?
So when it comes to partners, I work basically mainly with passive investors. So we have different investors in each deal. Some investors are more liquid than others. So we have some investors that invest in each and every of our deals, and some of them invest based on how liquid they are. And some investors say, I don't like Florida or I don't like Texas for different, reasons. So we have different partners that we work with in on each deal.
That makes sense. One thing that you are really good at on your podcast that I need to definitely improve upon is, but on every show you ask for a 5-star rating. So I'm going to go ahead and say to the audience, go on to Ellie Perlman's show, either find her on iTunes or wherever she may be, go onto her iTunes, Ready to Scale, and leave her a 5-star review, and go on to my show and do the same thing, please. That helps me to transition into what I want to talk about, which is your podcast. Tell me about some of the benefits that you've personally received from podcasting and why you like doing your show the way you currently have it formatted.
So I think the podcast, first and foremost, really helped me expand my network. So I meet people like you, for instance. I met through the podcast people that I did business with later on. I'm always learning. It doesn't matter how many years you're in an industry, especially in real estate, learning is endless. So I'm always coming out of each interview with at least one or two, some new form of knowledge that I can implement in business, some recommendation that the guest had. And of course, they once I interview someone, I usually, if they have a podcast, and they invite me on their show. And so it really helps if you're a syndicator out there. It really helps if you have a podcast to expand your network, to expand your reach, because once, now I'm on your show and you're going to post it, then I'm going to get exposure to your audience. And when you're going to be on my show, I'm going to post it and you're going to get exposure to my audience. So you're kind of tapping into, it's kind of a network. So you're tapping into
Mm-hmm.
the host's network, and really develop. That's how you evolve, that's how you develop your network. And I have a lot of investors reaching out to me and saying, hey, we heard you at you were a guest at so and so show, and I thought what you said was really interesting, and I really wanted to, it resonated with me, and I wanted to reach out and talk to you about investing together. So that happens a lot.
I love on your show, there's like dramatic music that kind of like, sets a tone and gets you interested. So I'd be interested in trying that out maybe sometime. So a lot of people talk about conservative underwriting and stress testing. I heard your show with Rod Cleve. He likes to do stress tests. Is there things that you do in your business that you recommend for most syndicators to implement when it comes to underwriting in regards to being conservative or stress testing before they purchase?
Yeah, how much time do you have to talk about it? Because I would try to touch on the main, tactics that we're using. So I think first and foremost, the in-place cap rates versus the exit cap. That's one of the main things that we're looking at, and trying to be conservative.
Time is flying, and I really want to get into your childhood, because your story and your long time ago background is very fascinating to me. You were in Israel and you had a pretty rough childhood. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your experience was? I know that you were living in the mountains in a village or a small town, not even a town. It was just like 30 families up in the mountains.
Yeah,
Give us
yeah,
more
up in the
details.
mountains. Yeah, it was. I remember when we moved to that place on the top of a mountain. There weren't any roads. I remember with my bicycle as a 3-year-old, I have a kind of a picture in my mind. I couldn't even go. It was all gravel everywhere, and my dad was pushing me because I couldn't even go on my bicycles. Yeah, it was pretty tough. It was a very, very small community, and we were the poorest. And when you're the poorest out of 30 or 35 families, kids make fun of us because we didn't have money. And I remember receiving food. People would put foods and clothes near our doorsteps, and we didn't know who donated the food and the clothes, but that's how bad it was, because it was really hard to pay for mortgage and food and clothing. I remember my parents used to buy me shoes that were 2 to 3 sizes larger, because I had to grow into the shoe, because they couldn't afford buying me the right shoe every 6 months or a year. And I used to stuff them with, I don't remember what I stuffed them with, so I'll be able to walk. But yeah, it was difficult. I helped my parents, make some money by cleaning, synagogues, and it didn't feel that bad, because that's the only reality, that I knew. I didn't know anything else. But I remember that at some point when I grew up a little bit, I think it was 12 or so, I realized that that was not kind of the standard. And I said, I'm going to make it one day. And I made a promise to myself that my future kids, which I still don't have, but my future kids are not going to experience what I'm experiencing. And
That's
that was kind of the fire behind everything that I've done. Just understand I have to get out of these circumstances.
Yeah, there's a lot of cultures from. I'm not sure what it's like in Israel, but so both of my parents were born in Mexico, right? My father graduated from medical school down there and then came to the United States, entered the military, was a doctor in the military, had a lot of political background, was pretty well off. I mean, particularly for by Mexican standards or by the standards that my family would set better said. And my mother's side of the family was very poor, and I hope you don't mind me sharing the story or stealing some of the time here. I'm kind of interested in talking about this one particular aspect that I had an aunt that grew up in poverty, and in Nogales, just across the border, we lived in these kind of like hills, very low income type of areas, and I grew up in what I call a middle class neighborhood or family, but like the poor people on my side of the family, they wanted me to remember where I came from. So they would like take me, remove all my clothes, and then put me in a bucket and make me take a bath there with cars driving by. And I was like, they would say stuff like, "So you remember where you came from, Mijo?" And I was
Mm.
just like, "Oh, wow." I mean, it's just like the people, the cultures, the things that people grow up with, and what they want you to remember, even though that's not what I experienced. They wanted me to experience what they experienced. But I think all these things and learning those, I've traveled a lot through Mexico and seen a lot of poverty. And from a global perspective, it really sheds some light on how fortunate and blessed we are to be in the multifamily syndication business and to surround ourselves with these people so that like my kids never have to experience stuff like that. So I kind of get it. But I wanted to lead that into a question. What do you think having spend some time in foreign countries and doing business as a property manager in Israel, how has that affected what you currently do on a global perspective and how that helps you in your business?
I think I see things differently because because I used to be a lawyer. I look at things and from a lawyer's perspective. So a lawyer always looks at every situation and immediately thinks, what are all the things that can go wrong, and how can I protect my client from that. And that kind of the approach that I have with my properties and my investors. I always look at all the bad things that can happen, and I say, okay, what are the steps that I need to take to protect my investors?
Your job as a lawyer is to protect your clients, but that's also your job as an investor. You have to protect
Right.
those people. And then so it's like twofold. It's like twice as much for you because you've experienced it on both aspects of that. I'm very curious, Ellie. You went to MIT and you got a master's degree there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. An
All right.
MBA.
I want to know about that school from your perspective. What was it like getting your master's at that very prestigious university? Was it very challenging? Tell me about some of your experiences going through that MBA program.
I don't know if challenging is the word, but it was a very, very humbling experience. So I went from being an A+ student at law school and someone who graduated with excellence and was on the on a dean's list to being in the same room with people that are at least as smart as you from Canada, people from Japan and China. And it was just amazing to see everyone. And it really gives you a global perspective about, the world, the world's economy, about businesses and how to run them. You can't be the same person if you're spending 2 years with so many people from so many countries. So that was a very enlightening and experience. And I don't think I'm the same person before business school and now.
So we're going to be doing the lightning round, which I'm stealing from your
All
show,
right.
and in just a little bit. There was, what was it that I wanted to ask you? I wanted to kind of go into Africa, Israel, and what was your experience? And then we'll do the lightning round after that. So tell us
Sure.
about working for them. What is it that you did for them, and how did that translate and help you to your current, what you're currently doing in business?
Yeah, so Africa Israel is actually Israel's largest developer. And I was basically helping them on the business side as they were building offices and apartment buildings in Eastern Europe. And so it was actually really interesting. I was negotiating with the banks and drafting all the contracts for the financing and with all the different contractors that were helping to build those properties. And we got caught in the middle of the recession. It doesn't matter how big your business is, doesn't matter how well established you are in the market, you always have to be careful. And that kind of shaped my perspective about investing and push me towards the more conservative side, especially with financing. I remember we called the bank and we asked, what's going on? Why aren't you signing the contract? It was a routine thing. We just drafted it, quick negotiation. They signed, wired the money, was really not a big deal. And all of a sudden everything froze. And our assumption that the money is coming while you already started doing the works and investing your own money, because it was just getting the funds were just a matter of, it was a routine, it was sure to come. And when you count on that, you can really lose a lot of money.
As a lawyer, I think I heard you say on one of your shows that you saw all of these interesting things happening. So you would deal with the contracts and the papers, and then you would see all this action happening somewhere else, and that planted a
Yeah.
seed for you. You wanted to be the person doing that and not so much doing the contracts. That's
Yes.
really cool. Tell us about the process of how that seed was established, and then how you turned yourself from lawyer to investor.
Sure. So I think, as a lawyer, as you mentioned, I realized, okay, this is a lot more exciting to be my clients, even though everything was happening, it was really bad back then. It was over a decade ago. But I realized that their lives are much more, it was much more interesting. I was always drawn to the business side. And at that point, I made the decision to move to the States, and I actually got accepted to Columbia's law school. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Columbia. I'm going to, get another, degree. I already had a bachelor and master's degree in law in Israel. And I said that, Columbia is going to buy way into the US market, and I'm going to transition and work as a lawyer in New York. And then I realized, after I got accepted, I realized, wait a minute, I actually don't want to continue being a lawyer. I want to be in business. I want to be in real estate. I want to start a real estate company. And then I realized, okay, I don't know how to start a business. All I know is, the legal, side of it. And I know how, I don't know how to run a real estate company. So I quit my job as a lawyer and I went to a much less glamorous position. I took a much less glamorous position, which is a property manager, and dealing with tenants, working at a really large firm really gave me exposure. I manage over $100 million worth of real estate. And after that, I realized, okay, I understand the legal aspect. I know how to manage properties. Now I want to learn how to start a business. And I said, I know I want to be in the States because I remember in college, I learned about self-made men and how in America, if you come here, if you work hard, there's no reason why you shouldn't be successful. And I made the transition. I actually had to convince my boyfriend at the time, who was an American, who is an American, to move back here. He wanted to stay in Israel for, a little bit longer. And I said, hey, it's time to go home. I'm applying to all those schools, and let's do it. And that's why I applied to, I applied to a bunch of schools and got accepted, and chose to go with MIT. And really the fascination to that school was it's a very entrepreneurial school, and that can teach me how to start a company. And a lot of the things that I've learned there, I'm implementing in my business. So my business it looks like a startup because that's, that was the blood that ran in my veins for years at MIT. And then I started investing, and that's, how I made the transition.
So that's crazy. I'm not sure what the timeline is, but you say that you just got to the United States 5 years ago. So you got a degree,
Yeah,
all the things that you've accomplished in this short time. Did you just arrive here 5 years ago? Is that what you're saying?
about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then where did you get the money to passively invest in your deals? Did you have some income coming from someplace that I'm not familiar with, or you got that from all of the money that you made as a lawyer in Israel?
So it's kind of a combination. My husband and I have been investing also passively, but we invest also in all of our deals. And in addition, I'm syndicating. So if we buy, the last deal we've done was Blue Lake did was $28 million. Then we raised about a little bit over $8 million. And so I didn't put $8 million out of my pocket. We put a significant amount, but about 20%. But the rest came from investors that I've raised capital from, and that's how you do it. That's the beauty in it. So I don't need to put 100% of the capital, and investors don't need to put 100% of the capital, but they can still have portion of an ownership of a larger property.
Very cool. Okay, so let's go into the lightning round. I'm really excited to do this because I've
Yeah,
never I've never done this. So
let's do it.
I'm really happy to do this. Okay, so let's start with what is your favorite hobby?
Oh, you're using my questions. Okay.
Yes.
My favorite hobby is weightlifting at the gym.
Okay, so something that nobody knows about you.
Actually starting to study Spanish, so I downloaded
Ah,
and I'm starting to learn it because I always have to be in a learning mode. I can't just be stagnant. I have to enrich my knowledge and my brain and stretch it. So I'm always looking for things to learn.
very cool. Your favorite food?
My favorite food, I love Indian food and I love quesadillas. So these are my two type of foods.
Favorite destination that you either like to travel to or would like to travel to?
I've never been to Costa Rica, and I really want to go there. And never been to Cabo, and I'm going there in June with my company, with my team. We're gonna have a retreat. I think that's about it. And my husband and I are doing a 2.5 week long trip in New Zealand. I've never been there,
Woo!
so I'm a world traveler. I love to travel, and I love to explore and experience different cultures. So hopefully I'll be able to, be in all continents, and be maybe in all countries by the time I'm 70. I don't know.
Oh, that would be awesome. Last question. Any advice that you wish you could give yourself back when you were starting?
Back when I was starting, build processes from day one. And it took me a little bit of time to build the processes. If you build processes from day one, your business is going to grow so much faster. So I wish I told that, to myself back then.
So that's really cool. I've been to Cabo. I've been to Costa Rica. Everyone in Costa Rica, they love to say "pura vida" and stuff like that. So you'll hear that. You'll hear that a lot. But
Nice.
yeah, New Zealand is on my bucket list. I am dying to go out there. So hopefully that'll happen sometime in the next couple of years. That would be amazing. That and Thailand.
Ooh,
Anyways,
Thailand. Yeah, if you
yeah.
go to Thailand, go to Khao Lak. Khao Lak is a little bit more secluded than the city, and it's a bit different experience. It's more nature, and it has the pace is a bit more slow. than, the city and all the hustle and bustle. So we really enjoyed Kaolack. Really
I'm
enjoyed.
I'm all about the nature part. I could
Hmm.
stay completely away from the city if it was up to me. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
So go to Kaolack.
Very cool. Okay, so when people want to get a hold of you, what are the best options? Should they go to your website?
Yeah, I mean, you can Google Ellie Perlman, and you'll see the website. It's ellieperlman.com, and Ellie is Ellie. And you can reach out to me through the website. There's a form where you can fill out, and we'll schedule a call. If someone wants to email me directly, it's just ellie@ellieperlman.com.
Something that's really cool about your show that you started a new tradition of giving something away on every show.
Hmm.
Would you offer something to the listeners of the Capital Raiser show, Capital Raiser Nation, as I'm calling them these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can offer the guide to kind of breaking down the LOI. And basically, it's a guide that teaches you, walks you through the different steps of the LOI and how to basically create a winning LOI, which is the letter of intent, which is basically the non-binding offer that you send a seller when you're making an offer to purchase their property.
Ellie Perlman, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Oh,
Yeah.
bye. Very
I know it was
crazy.
a lot of fun.
I know, it was a blast. I'm really excited to. Hopefully, are you going to any conferences soon? Maybe we can get a selfie together. I'd love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to be speaking at the Best Ever Conference.
I'll be
You're going to
there.
be there?
I'll be there. I'll be
Perfect.
snowboarding. Yeah.
Ah, perfect. So I'm going to be skiing. Hopefully, there's going to be time. I don't know. I'm going to bring my skis with me, but I'm going to be at the Best Ever Conference. And I'm also speaking at the IMN in Dallas and Santa Monica. I'm not sure
I'll
about the dates
I'll be at
exactly.
both of those. I'll be at the
Oh,
Dallas one, the
cool.
IMN, and the Santa Monica. They're both multifamily mid-market, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to be talking there probably about appreciation versus cash flow. Which one is better? And I can tell you right now, cash flow is king. I'm going with cash flow every time.
Ellie
Yeah.
Perlman, it's been such an honor having you on the show. I'm looking forward to hopefully hitting the slopes with you at the Best Ever Conference. And I wish you lots of success and prosperity in your business. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Likewise. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.